Dear Toby, do you realize that when I first met you at your studio 40 years ago, you greeted me as if you'd known me forever? I photographed you on the roof, and I immediately was swept away by your all-embracive enthusiasm, and I felt that I was being transported into another world. And I was. Who would have imagined that these photographs would connect so perfectly to the glorious art that you are sharing with us today?
All my artwork, it's really about what I find most powerful and beautiful in the world. When I started this project 3 years ago, I realized that I wanted to do dancers and movement, the idea of how the body moves through space. And it's also so interesting that the movement becomes the image rather than the person. It was a gift when the photographer, filmmaker Susan Dryfoos showed me these images. I went like, whoa, this is so strange to visit myself as a young artist.
What I imagine him doing is pulling back, saying what is kind of essential, and then pulling back again from that until he's removed the material that's inessential, the part that's peripheral, till he just gets to that kind of blinding core of what it is that he wants to express.
I was very intrigued by Tobi's body of work because of its focus on dance. There's a paradox in watching dance. It's the most evanescent of art forms. You watch and the beauty suffuses you, the drama, the theater, and then it's gone and it lives in your memory, distilled the same way that Tobi's art does.
That moment when you turn this beautiful 1 second into something that is really powerful. And by having a painting at the end of it, it immortalizes it. It's there forever. There are many steps involved, and that helps me clarify what really interests me. From the time I take the photograph until it becomes the painting, and by the time the piece of art is finished, it's at least 20 or 30 layers of modeling paste, opaque paint, translucent imagery, rags, many brushes, many different things. And I'm trying to make the work look like it's effortless. I do not want it to call attention to the fact that it takes so long. And I'm never upset when somebody says to me, wow, that looks so easy. And I think that's good.
But the thing that I really love you for is that you know that art is smushing things around. And you know that it's chopping things up. And you know that it's throwing things around and getting dirty. And you know that it's work. It's really work. It's not intellectual quotes from magazines and people with locked jaws telling you how wonderful you are. It's not a fad. It's not what people write about. It's not what critics say. You know that it's between you and yourself in your studio, and you work so hard. And because I know you're there and you're working that hard, it helps me do my smushing around.
What I think is so powerful about making art is it's about one's imagination. It's not only the imagination of the artist, but it's the imagination of the viewer.
His works are deeply felt. Even when they're as minimal as his earlier works, I mean, they're sublime. So emotionally, you're impacted by, what you're seeing. Spiritually, absolutely, you're involved. You can't help but be sort of pulled into it and involved in it.
I believe, and I've always believed, that we're all made in the image of God. And if we are, then every person has their own holiness and their own beauty. I realized that I wanted to do dancers and movement where it wasn't the ethnicity or the gender or the age of that person, but it was really that beautiful movement.
He recently told me how much he is sensitive to gender fluid students he has. Those very contemporary elements, which can make us understand Tobi Kahn's work in all its, its diversity and intensity.
The earlier work was far more ambiguous. There's a poetic ambiguity to what Tobi does, what I've always loved about his work, and what I love about a lot of abstract artists, where they're not telling you what it should be. They're offering you a portal into a way of seeing the world.
I was classically trained both at Hunter College and Pratt Institute by amazing teachers in anatomy, photography, painting, sculpture, printmaking, ceramics, assemblage, fiber arts, and puppetry. I think back to my work over, really 40 years. It started off as landscape, and then I became fascinated with seascapes, and then I became very interested in images from the microscope, and I began to realize that in fractal geometry you see images that are self-formations and aerial views that are so similar. And what I wanted to do in my work was to show you those similarities. Since the early 90s, I started making these large outdoor meditative spaces, art and healing spaces, interfaith spaces, and I'm very committed that every person or every being should have a way to experience peace in this world. I've been truly blessed by great mentors and patrons. Jane Blaffer Owen, a patron who commissioned Shalev, my first outdoor sculptures for New Harmony, Indiana in 1993, and Peter Sels, curator and art historian, curated 3 solo museum exhibitions of my work, including Metamorphosis, that traveled to 8 museums across the United States.
What I see in the work with this transcendental quality, this spiritual quality. People ask me what I mean by spiritual art, and the answer to that I always have, if people ask me that, is it means that it's good art. Because if it doesn't have a spiritual quality, it doesn't amount to anything.
In Tobi's case, he's profoundly good as a person and profoundly good as an artist. There's this guileless, almost childlike enthusiasm for what he's making all the time. And he's like, you gotta get into the studio. It's incredible I'm doing this.
That's always a real sweetheart. Without skipping a beat. Absolutely, he's always that, And talk to him on the phone, he's that. You run into him on the street, he's that.
What I want to do is take you on this journey. I want to give as much information that you know something, but not too much information that you can't dream out loud.
The memory of motion, ferociously distilled to line, fused to beauty, to lyric, to will. Your gaze launching body into absence. Surface leaping even as you look, and by your looking, conjure dancer, springing nape, hip, arch to meaning, elapsing time into infinity.